The night was drenched in rain, thick and relentless, the kind that blurs streetlights into trembling halos and makes the world feel smaller, lonelier. I stood by the living room window, watching droplets race each other down the glass, waiting for the sound of the front door opening, for my son's familiar footsteps, for his tired but gentle voice saying, "Mom, I'm home." But that sound never came. He was 17, too young to know how much a single night could change everything. At first, I told myself he was just out with friends, maybe lost track of time. He'd done that before. But as the hours stretched into dawn, and the rain turned from a storm into silence, an ache began to settle deep inside of me, an ache that told me something wasn't right. His room was still the same. Unmade bed, books stacked carelessly, his jacket slung over the chair and his phone charger tangled near the nightstand, but his phone wasn't there. Only a small folded note lay on his pillow, edges slightly damp as if touched by uncertain hands. I didn't open it at first. My heart was pounding too hard, and a mother's instinct whispered, once I read that letter, life would divide into two parts, before the note and after it. But curiosity, or maybe fear, took over. I unfolded it slowly. His handwriting, shaky but deliberate, stared back at me. "Mom, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not because I don't love you, but because I can't let you suffer for what I've done. I never meant for things to go this far." My knees went weak. I sat on the edge of his bed, the paper trembling in my hands. The words were simple, but each line sliced through me like glass. What had he done? Where had he gone? I read on, my breath shallow. "You always told me the truth comes out, no matter how deep it's buried. You were right. Tonight, someone will find out what happened to Mr. Lawton. They'll come looking for me. But please don't try to find me first. You'll only get hurt." Mr. Lawton. The name hit me like a blow. He was our neighbor, a quiet, solitary man who lived 2 houses down. Retired, kept to himself, always polite. Just last week, I'd waved to him as he walked his dog. He'd smiled, said something about how proud I must be of my son. I'd laughed, said he was a good kid. And now, my son's note mentioned him. I read the rest of the letter twice, then 3 times, as if repetition could somehow change its meaning. But it didn't. There were no details, no confession, no clear answers. Only fear, bleeding from every stroke of ink. I grabbed my keys and rushed into the rain, heading toward Mr. Lawton's house. The street was empty, the air heavy with the smell of wet asphalt and dread. His lights were off, but the front door was slightly ajar. My heart clenched. I hesitated for a second before stepping inside. "Mr. Lawton?" My voice cracked in the silence. No answer. Just the creak of the floorboards under my soaked shoes. The living room looked untouched, the faint scent of pipe tobacco lingering in the air. Everything was in order, except for one thing. The window at the back was shattered. Cold air rushed in through the gap, and near the broken glass, I saw it. A smear of blood. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world spun, and my knees almost gave out. "Ethan," I whispered my son's name into the emptiness, the sound swallowed by the rain outside. Then, from somewhere deeper in the house, a faint noise, like something falling. I followed it, step by cautious step, until I reached the hallway leading to the basement. The door was slightly open, like flickering below. My pulse was wild now, my throat dry. I pushed the door wider, and the dim light revealed a trail of muddy footprints descending the stairs. I couldn't tell if they were fresh or days old, but they led down, and I followed. The basement was cold, cluttered with old furniture and boxes. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly as if disturbed recently. And there, on the concrete floor, lay another piece of paper. This one was folded neatly and placed on top of a small wooden crate. I reached for it, my fingers trembling uncontrollably. "If you're reading this, Mom, then you didn't listen. Please go home. I'm trying to fix what I broke. Mr. Lawton didn't deserve what happened. None of this was supposed to happen. I pressed the note to my chest and whispered his name again, louder this time, my voice echoing through the damped basement. That's when I noticed something under the crate, a flash of metal, faint but unmistakable. A revolver. Old, rusty, but unmistakably real. And suddenly, I realized this wasn't just about a runaway son or a misunderstanding. This was about something darker, something my son had tried to bury. I heard a siren wail in the distance, then another. The flashing red and blue lights seeped through the cracks of the basement window like a heartbeat. They were coming. For him. And maybe for me, too. I didn't know where Ethan was or what he had done, but one thing was clear. The note wasn't just a confession. It was a warning. And the night my son didn't come home was only the beginning of a truth I was never meant to find. Because as I turned toward the stairs, ready to leave, I saw one last thing that froze me in place. A framed photo on the dusty shelf, covered in cobwebs. It was of Mr. Lawton and my husband. The husband who had died 10 years ago. The husband my son had never known. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about our family began to unravel. I reached out with trembling fingers, brushing away the dust from the photo frame. The image was faded, but there was no mistake. That was my husband, Daniel, standing beside Mr. Lawton. Both younger, smiling, their arms slung over each other's shoulders like old friends. On the back, written in neat ink, were the words, Business Partners, 2008. A chill crawled down my spine. Daniel never mentioned a Mr. Lawton. In all our years together, he'd spoken of old friends, of colleagues from his law firm, but never this man. And yet there they were, captured in a moment that looked genuine, comfortable, familiar, as if their bond went far deeper than casual work relations. I sank to the floor, the photo frame clutched to my chest. My mind raced back through memories, searching for any trace of this connection. Daniel's late nights, the unexplained phone calls, the business trips that didn't quite line up. Could it all have been tied to him? The wail of sirens grew louder. I could see their lights cutting through the rain, flashing through the basement window like frantic warning signals. I stood, heart hammering, and turned toward the stairs. As I reached the top, the door burst open with a crash. 2 police officers stepped in, guns drawn, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. "Ma'am, step away from the weapon," one of them shouted, his beam landing on the revolver still lying on the floor below. "It's not mine!" I cried, raising my hands. "Please, my son, he's missing. I just found his notes. But my voice trailed off as another figure appeared behind them. Detective Harper. I recognized him instantly. Tall, stern, the kind of man whose presence filled a room before he even spoke. He'd been at our house once before, years ago, when Daniel's accident was investigated. Only now, he didn't look like someone who'd stumbled into a tragedy. He looked like a man who had been expecting this night. "Mrs. Collins," he said evenly, lowering his flashlight, "we need you to come with us." "I don't understand. My son, Ethan, he left me a note. Something's happened to Mr. Lawton and—" He stepped closer, cutting me off gently but firmly. "We're aware of the situation. Mr. Lawton's car was found abandoned near the old quarry an hour ago. Blood on the driver's seat, no sign of him." The room seemed to tilt. My voice broke. "So you think Ethan—" Harper's expression softened, but his eyes stayed sharp. "Right now, we just need to find him. But, Mrs. Collins, your husband's name came up in our system. There were financial ties between him and Lawton, ties that weren't reported when we closed your husband's case." I stared at him, stunned. "Financial ties? What are you saying?" He exhaled. "I'm saying that maybe your husband's death wasn't an accident, and if your son discovered something he shouldn't have, it might explain why he ran." The words hit me like a physical blow. 10 years of grief, confusion, and silence came rushing back all at once. I'd lived believing Daniel's car crash was just a cruel twist of fate. But if there was more, if someone caused it, then maybe Ethan had stumbled into something buried for a reason. The officers led me outside. Rain soaked my hair, the cold cutting straight to my bones. The flashing lights painted the neighborhood in surreal hues, and curious faces peeked from windows. I felt like a ghost in my own life, dragged into a nightmare that was unfolding too fast to understand. As I sat in the back of the patrol car, I caught a glimpse of the notes still clutched in my hand, Ethan's desperate handwriting smudged by rain and tears. The words seemed to breathe again. I'm trying to fix what I broke. Fix what? What could a 17-year-old boy possibly fix that involved a man like Lawton and a decade-old secret? At the station, they took my statement. The room was sterile, humming with fluorescent light, the ticking of a wall clock loud and unforgiving. Harper paced slowly as I recounted everything. The notes, the photo, the revolver. When I mentioned the picture of Daniel and Lawton, his expression shifted. "Would you be willing to show us the photo?" he asked. "It's still at the house," I said softly. "But, Detective, you said Daniel's death might not have been an accident. Why are you only saying this now?" He looked at me long and hard before answering, because some cases get buried when the wrong people are involved. I leaned forward. "What do you mean by wrong people?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he handed me a folder, thin, brown, labeled Lawton Charles. Inside were a few printed reports, some photos, and an old document stamped with the seal of the state attorney's office. My eyes caught a familiar signature at the bottom. My husband's signature. Daniel Collins. The date was 2 weeks before his death. The document was a sworn statement, a witness deposition, against someone accused of embezzlement, but the name of the accused had been blacked out, redacted with thick ink. And at the bottom, scrawled hastily in a different hand, were 3 words that turned my blood cold. "Don't trust Lawton." I pressed a trembling hand to my mouth. "Detective, Daniel wrote this?" "It appears so," Harper said. "We believe your husband was preparing to expose a financial scandal involving several high-profile investors. Mr. Lawton was one of them. But before the case could go public, your husband died. And now, 10 years later, your son might have uncovered the truth." I felt dizzy. But how? He was just a kid when Daniel died. Harper nodded slowly. Sometimes the past has a way of finding those who can't let go. I thought of Ethan's obsession with old family boxes, the way he'd been sneaking into the attic lately, asking questions about his father. I'd brushed it off as curiosity, a teenage longing for connection, but maybe he'd found something that connected his father's death to the man next door. And maybe that something had driven him to run. The detective's phone buzzed sharply. He stepped aside to answer, his tone shifting from calm to urgent. When he returned, his face was grave. "We found Ethan's car." My breath caught. "Where?" "Near the quarry," he said quietly. "Same place Mr. Lawton's was found. But Ethan's isn't empty." My heart lurched. "He's there?" Harper looked at me, his eyes unreadable. "There's a boy in the driver's seat, Mrs. Collins. But we need you to confirm if it's him." My hands went cold. The room felt like it was spinning, the detective's words echoing in my head, but refusing to make sense. A boy in the car. My lips barely moved. Alive? Harper didn't answer right away. And that silence, that impossible, suffocating silence, told me everything I didn't want to know. I stood up, unsteady, gripping the edge of the table for support. "I need to see him. Now."
He hesitated, but one look at me must have told him there was no use arguing. Minutes later, we were back in the cruiser, rain streaking the windows, the the tires cutting through the flooded streets toward the quarry. My heartbeat felt too loud, like it was trying to drown out the sirens ahead of us. The quarry loomed at the edge of town, a hollow, jagged pit filled with mist and the ghosts of stories that never had happy endings. I remembered Daniel bringing me here once, before we were married. He said the view made him feel small enough to remember what mattered. Now, standing there again, I felt small for a very different reason. The flashing lights painted the quarry walls red and blue. Officers moved about quietly, their faces grim. Harper led me closer to where two paramedics were crouched beside a dark sedan, its driver's side door hanging open, rain pouring into the seat. I could barely make myself look. My hands shook so violently that Harper had to steady me by the shoulder. And then I saw him. The boy slumped over the wheel wasn't my son. Relief hit me so fast and so hard that it almost felt like pain. I gasped for breath, pressing a hand to my chest, tears springing from some unknown place. But the relief was short-lived, because when the paramedics pulled the body back enough for me to see his face clearly, I recognized him. It was Tyler, Ethan's best friend. I remembered him laughing in our kitchen, asking for more pasta, teasing Ethan about his terrible taste in music. The kind of boy who seemed incapable of harm. But there he was, pale, lifeless, a streak of blood tracing from his temple down to his neck. Why would he be in Ethan's car? I whispered. Harper's expression darkened. That's what we're going to find out. He gestured to one of the officers, who handed him a small evidence bag. Inside it was a phone, cracked, wet, but still functional enough to see the faint light of a message notification glowing through the screen. Harper glanced at it, then turned the display toward me. It was a text draft addressed to me, from Ethan. Mom, if you find this, Tyler helped me. I didn't mean for him to get hurt. Please don't hate me. I just wanted to make it right. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Make what right? I whispered again, more to myself than to anyone else. Harper's jaw tightened. We'll have tech recover the full message history. Maybe it'll tell us where your son went next. But I didn't need the rest of the messages to understand. Ethan wasn't running from guilt. He was running towards something unfinished, something he believed could fix what his father started. As the rain began to ease, I noticed a path leading away from the quarry, fresh footprints in the mud, 2 sets, one heavier, one lighter. The smaller ones stopped halfway down, where the ground sloped toward the edge. The larger ones continued on. I turned to Harper. He's still out there, I said. He didn't leave the quarry. He frowned. Mrs. Collins, please. But I didn't wait. I pushed past the yellow tape and started down the path, ignoring the shouts behind me. The mud clung to my shoes, cold water seeping into my skin, but I didn't stop. I followed the prints until they vanished into the tall reeds by the edge of the pit. Ethan! My voice broke against the echoing walls. Ethan, it's Mom. Please answer me. The only reply was the distant drip of rainwater hitting stone. I turned in circles, scanning the darkness, until something glimmered near the rocks, a faint reflection, metallic. I crouched, wiping the mud away. It was a locket. His locket. The one I'd given him on his 16th birthday, with a photo of me and Daniel inside. He'd been here, recently. I looked toward the water, a black mirror stretching out before me, ripples trembling in the weak moonlight. And for a terrifying moment, I thought I saw something beneath the surface. Movement, slow and deliberate. Ethan! I whispered again, my voice trembling. Harper and the officers reached me seconds later. One of them shined a flashlight into the water. There was nothing there now, only the reflection of light breaking on the ripples. Harper crouched beside me, his voice low. If he's still alive, he's scared. And whatever he's caught up in, he's trying to solve it on his own. We'll find him.
I shook my head. You don't understand. He's not just running from guilt, he's chasing answers. if he found proof that Daniel's death wasn't an accident, he won't stop until he uncovers the truth, even if it kills him. Harper met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty there, maybe even fear. "Then we'd better find that proof before he does," he said. As the officers spread out to search, I stood alone at the edge of the quarry, gripping the locket so tightly it cut into my palm. I felt the weight of every secret, every lie that had been buried for 10 long years pressing down on me. Somewhere out there, my son was walking through the same darkness that had swallowed his father. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe they were both chasing the same ghost, one that refused to stay buried. Behind me, Harper's radio crackled. A voice came through, urgent, breathless. "Detective, we've got movement near the old access tunnel on the east side. Someone's down there. Looks like a kid." I froze. My heart skipped. Harper met my eyes. It might be him. I didn't wait for permission. I was already running, mud flying from my shoes, the sound of my heartbeat louder than the sirens behind me. The old access tunnel was carved deep into the rock, a remnant of when the quarry had been operational decades ago. I remember Daniel once telling me that some places were built to keep things in, not out. As I reached the mouth of the tunnel, my flashlight flickered across damp stone and scattered footprints. The air smelled of earth and rust. And somewhere inside that darkness, I heard it. A voice. Weak. Trembling. Familiar. "Mom?" I froze, the sound echoing faintly from the shadows ahead. My breath hitched. "Ethan?" I whispered, my voice breaking apart. The beam of my flashlight shook violently as I lifted it, slicing through the damp tunnel air. "Ethan, Mom, don't come closer." His voice was trembling, almost swallowed by the tunnel walls, but unmistakable. I took a hesitant step forward, the cold water at my feet rippling. "Ethan, it's okay. You're safe now. Please let me see you." "I said don't," he shouted, his voice cracking, raw with panic. The echo of it bounced off the stone so sharply that it made me flinch. "They're watching." "Who's watching?" I demanded, stepping deeper, the beam of light finally landing on him. He was standing near the far wall, drenched and pale, his face streaked with dirt and rain. And in his hand, glinting faintly in the flashlight's glow, was the revolver from the basement. "Ethan," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady even though my insides were unraveling. "Put that down, please." He shook his head violently, his shoulders trembling. "You don't understand, Mom. I can't. It's not what it looks like. None of it is." Behind me, I heard the crunch of footsteps, Harper and another officer approaching fast. I turned and hissed, "Stay back." But they were already close enough for their flashlights to catch his outline. Ethan's eyes widened. "No, you brought them." He stumbled backward, the revolver slipping slightly in his grip. "They'll twist everything, Mom, just like they did to Dad." My chest clenched. "What are you talking about? What did they do to Dad?" He swallowed hard, tears cutting through the dirt on his face. "He found out about Lawton and the others, the money, the forged accounts, all of it. He was going to tell the police, but Lawton got to him first. Dad tried to run, tried to protect us, but..." His voice broke completely. "They made it look like an accident. And now Lawton's gone too." Harper stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "Ethan, listen to me. We can talk about all of that, but you have to drop the weapon first. No one's here to hurt you." Ethan's hand shook, the metal of the revolver catching the flashlight beam again. "You think I don't know who you are?" he said bitterly, looking straight at Harper. My eyes snapped toward Harper, shock pulsing through me. "That's not true," I said. But Harper's expression had hardened.
"Ethan, you're confused," he said carefully. "You were too young to remember what really happened." "I remember enough," Ethan spat. "I remember Dad's car being found 2 towns over, even though he left from home. I remember you telling Mom that the fire started from an electrical fault, but it didn't. The coroner said there was gasoline in the trunk." Gasoline. My knees went weak. He was right. I remembered that detail now, buried under years of grief. I'd asked Harper about it once, and he'd brushed it off as an error in the report. I hadn't questioned it. I'd been too broken to. Ethan took another step back, the gun trembling between his fingers. "He found proof, Mom. I found it too. It's on his old hard drive. Lawton was the last person who knew the truth, and when he tried to blackmail them, they came for him. They came for me too." I shook my head, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Ethan, who are they?" He hesitated, glancing toward the tunnel entrance. The sound of more footsteps echoed, backup officers moving closer. His breathing quickened. "You need to go, Mom. Please. They won't let either of us leave if they find what I took." Harper's voice rose. "What did you take?" Ethan's eyes flicked toward him, full of accusation. "You already know. That's why you're here." A tense silence filled the tunnel. Then Harper slowly raised his hands. "Son, whatever you think—" "Don't call me that," Ethan shouted. You knew he didn't die by accident, and you buried it. You covered it up for them." The way Harper's face shifted, just slightly, just enough, made my stomach twist. "Ethan," I said quietly, "listen to me. Whatever's on that drive, we can go together. We can show someone else, someone outside this town." He shook his head, his breath ragged. "You don't understand. There's no one outside this. It's everywhere. Dad tried that. And now Lawton's dead. Tyler is dead because he helped me." My breath caught. "Tyler helped you?" He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "He drove me to Lawton's. We just wanted the files. We didn't mean for it to go wrong, but Lawton, he panicked. He said he was being watched, that they'd kill him if he talked. He grabbed the gun, Mom. I tried to stop him, but it went off." My hands flew to my mouth. "Oh, Ethan," he whispered. "I didn't want to hurt anyone, Mom. I just wanted to tell the truth." Behind me, I heard the faint click of a safety being released. Harper's voice dropped low, tense. "Put the gun down, Ethan." Ethan's eyes darted between us, full of fear. "You're not taking me in. Not to them." I stepped forward, slowly, my palms raised. "Ethan, look at me. You're my son. Whatever happened, we'll face it together. Please, give me the gun." He stared at me, his lower lip trembling, the weight of a decade's worth of secrets pressing down on both of us. For a moment, I saw the child he once was, the one who used to run to me after nightmares, whispering, "You'll keep me safe, right?" And then, from behind, Harper moved. Too fast. Ethan flinched, twisting instinctively, and the gun went off. The sound was deafening, echoing down the tunnel like thunder trapped in stone. My scream tore out before I even realized it. Ethan stumbled backward, eyes wide, the revolver clattering from his hand as he fell to his knees. "Ethan!" I lunged forward, catching him before he hit the ground. Blood bloomed across his sleeve, dark and spreading, but his chest was still moving, shallow, uneven, but alive. He looked up at me, dazed, tears mingling with the rain still dripping from his hair. "I didn't want to hurt anyone, Mom. I just wanted to tell the truth." I held him tightly, sobbing, shouting for help as officers rushed in. Harper barked orders into his radio, but his voice was distant, muffled by the roaring in my ears. All I could see was Ethan's face, pale, fragile, and flickering like a candle fighting against the dark. And all I could think was that the truth he had been chasing was still out there, hidden in the shadows of a world that had already taken everything from us once. The paramedics rushed past me, their movements sharp and practiced.
but all I could do was sit on the cold stone floor, holding Ethan's limp hand as they worked over him. My heart refused to believe what my eyes saw: the blood, the trembling rise and fall of his chest, the faint sound of him trying to breathe. One of the medics pressed his fingers to Ethan's neck, nodded quickly, and said something I couldn't catch. They lifted him onto a stretcher, voices blurring together, radios crackling, orders shouted. I followed them as far as the tunnel entrance before Harper stopped me with a hand on my arm. "Mrs. Collins," he said, breath heavy, his face drawn tight. "Let them take him. You can ride in the next unit." I jerked away. "You shot my son!" The words tore from me like something raw and alive. "You moved when I told you not to! He was scared. He was trying to give me the gun." "I didn't fire," Harper said, eyes wide. "My weapon's still holstered." For a second, I wanted to call him a liar, but then the echo of the shot replayed in my mind, muffled, slightly distant. Maybe it hadn't come from him. The tunnel had been full of shadows, echoes. It could have come from anywhere. "Then who?" I whispered. Harper didn't answer. He turned toward one of the officers and ordered him to sweep the area. His voice was low but urgent now, every trace of calm gone. Outside, the world had gone eerily quiet. The rain had stopped, and the night air was thick with the smell of mud and gunpowder. The flashing lights painted the quarry walls like bruises. I followed the paramedics toward the waiting ambulance, numb, my clothes clinging to me, my mind refusing to stay still. They loaded Ethan inside, and I climbed in after him. His skin was cold under my fingertips, his face pale but peaceful. There was a strange stillness about him, the kind that frightened me more than any wound. The medic pressed a hand against my shoulder. "He's stable for now. Just keep talking to him, okay? Sometimes they hear you." I nodded, though my throat was too tight to speak. I brushed his hair back from his forehead, whispering his name like a prayer. "It's going to be okay, Ethan. I'm right here. You hear me? I'm right here." The ambulance jolted forward, the siren wailing into the night. Halfway to the hospital, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I almost ignored it until I saw the screen light up. It was an unknown number, but the message preview froze my blood. "You shouldn't have gone into the tunnel. He wasn't supposed to live." My hands went cold. I reread it twice, 3 times, as if repetition could make it disappear, but it didn't. I turned toward the front of the ambulance. "We need to tell Detective Harper. Someone's—" The medic glanced at me, frowning. "Ma'am, what's wrong?" Before I could answer, the ambulance swerved. The driver cursed under his breath as a dark SUV cut across the road, blocking our path. Tires screeched, metal grinding. We lurched to a stop so violently I almost fell forward. "Stay inside," the medic barked, but I was already moving toward the small window separating the back from the cab. "Who are they?" I demanded. The driver's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. "No plates," he said. "They just came out of nowhere." Headlights glared through the windshield, blindingly bright. Then 2 doors opened. Figures stepped out, silhouettes sharp against the light. My pulse thundered in my ears. I looked down at Ethan. His hand twitched weakly in mine. "Mom," he murmured, barely audible. "I'm here," I whispered. "Don't move." Outside, one of the medics shouted, "Hey, you can't—" And then there was a flash. Not a gunshot, something quieter, like a hiss of compressed air. The medic crumpled to the ground. The driver cursed again, fumbling for the radio. "Base, we need backup on Route 7. The side door burst open. 2 men stood there, faces hidden by masks, their movements fast and deliberate. One of them reached for the stretcher. "Take your hands off him!" I screamed, grabbing the nearest thing I could find, a metal tray, and swung it wildly. It connected with one man's shoulder, making him grunt in pain.
He shoved me back hard enough that I hit the wall, stars bursting behind my eyes. "Don't hurt her," the second man said sharply. "We just need the boy." "The boy?" My voice was hoarse. "He's my son!"
The man hesitated for a split second, just long enough for Ethan to move. His hand darted toward the IV stand beside him, yanking it free and swinging it up with surprising force. The blow struck the first man squarely in the face. He stumbled backward, blood spraying from his nose. "Run," Ethan whispered. "Mom, go!" But before I could react, the other man struck him across the head with the butt of something metallic. I screamed, lunging forward, only to be grabbed and shoved aside. My shoulder slammed against the metal wall. The world tilted. I heard shouting outside, another engine approaching, sirens, faint, but growing louder. The masked man exchanged a quick look, then one of them cursed under his breath. "We're out of time." They grabbed Ethan again, hauling him toward the door. I threw myself forward, clawing at one of them, catching the edge of his sleeve. "You're not taking him!" I cried, my voice raw, animal. He turned, and for a split second, our eyes met through the slit of his mask. Pale gray eyes, cold, light gray. I've seen them before, years ago. Daniel's office. His partner, maybe. Lawton hadn't worked alone. Before I could say another word, something hard struck the side of my head. The world went white, then black. When I came to, the ambulance was empty. The medic was gone, the driver unconscious, and the stretcher missing. My ears rang, my hands slick with blood that wasn't mine. Outside, police cars were pulling up, lights flashing wildly against the trees. I stumbled out, collapsing into the mud. Harper was there, barking orders into his radio. He turned as I fell, rushing toward me. He shouted, "Where is he? Where's your son?" I pointed toward the darkness of the woods, my voice barely a whisper. "They took him." Harper froze, and for a moment something like panic flickered in his eyes. But it wasn't fear for Ethan, it was something else. Something closer to recognition. He knew who had taken him. The flashing lights painted everything in harsh red and blue as officers fanned out into the woods. I could still taste blood in my mouth, the pounding in my head making the world tilt. Harper crouched beside me, his hand firm on my shoulder, trying to keep me from collapsing completely. He said tightly, "Stay with me, Mrs. Collins. What did they look like? How many?" I could barely focus. My voice came out shaky, barely more than a whisper. "2. Maybe 3. Masks. One of them had gray eyes. Cold. Light gray. I've seen them before. Years ago. Daniel's office. His partner, maybe." Harper's expression changed, but only for a fraction of a second. It was there. A flicker of something that wasn't surprise. Recognition. Guilt. I saw it before he looked away. He stood abruptly and barked orders to the other officers, but his voice sounded too controlled, too careful. "Sweep the woods, block off the road both ways, I want every exit covered." I forced myself to my feet, swaying. "Don't lie to me, Harper. You know who they are, don't you?" He didn't answer. "I saw it in your face," I pressed, stepping closer. "Those men didn't just appear out of nowhere. You said Daniel's case was closed. You said there was nothing left to investigate, but you knew. You knew what he was involved in." Harper exhaled slowly, rain dripping from his hair, the muscles in his jaw tightening. "You don't understand, Mrs. Collins. There are things you shouldn't dig into, things that were buried for a reason." "Buried?" I snapped. "My husband was murdered. My son is missing because of it. How much deeper do you expect me to let it get buried?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, finally, his voice softened. "If you really want the truth, you'll have to be ready to lose everything that's left." The sound of radios crackling filled the silence between us. An officer ran over breathless. "Detective, we found tire tracks. Black SUV, looks fresh. They turned off toward the north logging road." Harper nodded, already heading that way. I followed without waiting for an invitation. The officer tried to stop me, but Harper raised a hand. "Let her come," he said. "She's part of this now."
The forest was dark and endless, branches clawing at the sky, the air heavy with damp earth and exhaust fumes. The tracks were deep, leading toward an abandoned construction site that used to be a mining facility decades ago, another forgotten relic of the town's past.
As we got closer, a faint light flickered ahead. Not headlights, but something smaller, steadier. A lantern, maybe. We moved quietly, Harper signaling for the officers to spread out. I could barely breathe, each step sinking into the mud. When we reached the clearing, I saw it. The SUV, doors open, engine still warm, but no one inside. And then a sound, faint, metallic, coming from the warehouse ahead. Harper drew his gun, motioning for silence. The officers flanked the entrance. He glanced at me once. "Stay behind me," he whispered. But I didn't. I moved before he could stop me, slipping through the side entrance of the warehouse. The air inside was thick with the scent of oil and rust. Shadows stretched long under the weak light of a single hanging bulb. And then I saw him. Ethan. He was tied to a chair in the middle of the room, duct tape around his wrists, a gash above his eyebrow. He was breathing, barely, but conscious enough to turn his head when he heard me. "Mom." His voice was hoarse, a ghost of sound. I ran to him, tearing at the tape, my hands shaking so badly I could hardly grip it. "It's okay, sweetheart, I've got you." "Don't," said a voice from the darkness. I froze. A man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, his hair gray at the temples, his face weathered but sharp, and those eyes, those same pale gray eyes that had haunted me from that old photo, fixed on me like I was something inevitable. "Mrs. Collins," he said with unsettling calm, "you should have stayed home." My mouth dried. You were Lawton's partner?" He smiled faintly. "Lawton was never a partner. He was a liability, just like your husband." The words cut through me. "You killed them?" He tilted his head. "Let's not use ugly words. Your husband made a choice. He wanted to expose something that was never meant to see daylight. We made sure it didn't. But your boy," he looked toward Ethan, "he's made it difficult. He found the drive, the files your husband hid, and I can't let that leave this place. Those files prove what you did. You're scared of the truth." He chuckled softly. "The truth doesn't scare me, Mrs. Collins. The people who own it do. You think this is about me? About your husband? No, this goes much higher. Lawton panicked, tried to cash out. Your son found what he shouldn't have, and now he's a problem I need to solve." Behind me, I heard the faint creak of boots. Harper, entering quietly through the main door. The man didn't notice. I forced myself to stay calm, my mind racing. "If you hurt him," I said, "you'll never make it out of here alive. The police—" He laughed again, low and almost pitying. "Do you really think the police are here to save you?" Before I could answer, he pulled a phone from his pocket and tapped the screen. Across the room, on a stack of crates, a laptop screen flickered to life. A video feed appeared, and my stomach dropped. It was the quarry, the same flashing lights, the same police cars. But this time, I saw the other side of it. Men in plain clothes moving among the officers, speaking into earpieces, guiding the search. Harper's men. Except, not all of them were wearing badges. The man smiled at my shock. "You see, Harper's been useful, but even he doesn't realize how deep this goes." I turned toward the sound of movement behind me. Harper was standing there, gun raised, but not at the man. At me. "Put it down, Harper," I said quietly. He hesitated, jaw tight. "I didn't want it to end this way. Your husband tried to bring them down. I tried to protect you both. But when your son dug it up again," he shook his head, "you should have left it buried." Ethan's weak voice cut through the air. You were supposed to help us." Harper's hand trembled. "I am helping you. If I don't end this here, they'll come for everyone." The gray-eyed man smiled, almost approving. "You see, Mrs. Collins, he's a man of reason." I looked between them, my son bleeding, the detective who'd lied to me for years, and the man who'd killed my husband, and felt something cold and unrecognizable take root inside me. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I reached slowly into my pocket, closing my fingers around the small object I'd taken from the ambulance floor, Ethan's locket. But inside, behind the photo, there was something else, a tiny memory card. The files. And before anyone could react, I held it up so they could see. "This," I said, quietly, "is what you're all so terrified of." The gray-eyed man's expression hardened, the faint smirk vanishing as he took a slow step forward. His gaze locked on the tiny memory card between my fingers, like it was a live explosive. "Give it to me," he said, softly, his voice almost gentle but dripping with threat. Behind him, Harper's gun wavered. I could see the conflict twisting through his face, the man torn between guilt and orders, between loyalty and conscience. I didn't move. I tightened my grip around the locket, feeling its sharp edge cut into my palm. "You want it? Then come and take it." For a second, no one breathed. The rain outside pounded against the rusted roof, echoing through the hollow space of the warehouse. Ethan was still struggling weakly against the ropes, his lips pale, his eyes filled with something between fear and apology. The gray-eyed man moved first. He lunged forward, surprisingly fast for his age. Harper shouted. Whether at him or at me, I couldn't tell. But before the man could reach me, a deafening gunshot shattered the air. For a moment, I thought I'd been hit. The world froze. Then I saw the gray-eyed man stumble back, clutching his shoulder, blood blooming across his sleeve. The shot had come from the doorway. It was one of the younger officers, Jenkins, the nervous one I remembered from earlier. He stood there, wide-eyed, his hands trembling around his gun. "Detective Harper, what the hell is going on here?" "Put the gun down, Jenkins," Harper barked, his voice sharp and desperate. "You don't understand." "I understand enough," Jenkins shouted back. "We were supposed to find a missing kid, not cover up a crime scene." Harper swore under his breath, turning his weapon toward Jenkins now, and for a second the entire world balanced on a single breath. I saw it all in flashes, the young officer's terror, Harper's guilt, the gray-eyed man's rage as he reached for his own gun again. I moved before I even realized it. I ran toward Ethan, tearing at the last of the tape around his wrists. "Mom, no," he tried to warn me, but the chaos erupted behind us. Gunfire exploded through the warehouse, each shot ricocheting off metal and concrete. I threw myself over Ethan, shielding him as bullets screamed through the air. Sparks rained from shattered light fixtures. Then silence. I lifted my head slowly, ears ringing, the air heavy with smoke and the smell of gunpowder. The gray-eyed man was down, motionless, his gun lying beside him. Jenkins was on his knees, clutching his arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. And Harper stood frozen, his gun still raised, but his eyes distant, almost hollow. He looked at me, not with anger, but with a strange, exhausted sorrow. "It's over," I said, quietly. He shook his head. "You don't get it. This was never going to end here." Then, before I could move, he turned the gun on himself and pulled the trigger. The sound was short, final. The echo rolled through the warehouse, fading into the steady patter of rain. For a long time, I couldn't move, couldn't think. Just the sight of Harper's body lying there, the detective who'd once brought me flowers at Daniel's funeral, who'd promised to find the truth, now just another casualty of it.
Ethan coughed weakly beside me. "Mom, we have to go." His voice broke through my paralysis. I grabbed him, helping him to his feet. He was limping badly, blood staining his jeans, but he was alive. That was all that mattered. We stumbled toward the exit, stepping over broken glass and shell casings.
Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Jenkins was on the radio, calling for backup, his voice shaking. When he saw us, he looked torn between relief and disbelief. "We need medics," he said quickly, and internal affairs. This is bigger than I thought." I didn't answer. My only focus was on Ethan, on keeping him moving, on getting him somewhere safe. We reached the SUV the masked men had arrived in. The keys were still in the ignition. "Get in," I said. "Mom, you can't." "Get in." He did. I slid into the driver's seat, my hands trembling as I started the engine. Mud splattered across the windshield as the tires spun and caught traction. The warehouse grew smaller in the rearview mirror, fading into the misty gray of dawn. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic hum of the wipers and Ethan's uneven breathing. After a few miles, he finally whispered, "Dad knew, didn't he?" I glanced at him, his face pale and bruised, eyes heavy but burning with quiet understanding. "Yes," I said softly. "He knew too much, and he tried to stop them."
Ethan turned, noticing them too. "Mom," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "They're following us." "I see them," I said, trying to sound steady, though my pulse was pounding so hard it felt like it might shake the car apart. "Keep your head down." "Who do you think it is?" "Doesn't matter," I said quietly. "All that matters is we stay ahead of them." The road curved sharply, the trees on either side thick and dripping with rain. I pressed my foot harder on the gas, the SUV growling as it picked up speed. The headlights behind us grew smaller for a moment, and then, to my horror, a second pair appeared from a side road, merging in behind the first. 2 vehicles now. Ethan saw them too. "Mom, they're not letting us go." I forced myself to stay calm, scanning the road ahead. "Seatbelt on. Hold on tight." He obeyed, wincing as he adjusted his injured leg. The night blurred into streaks of gray and green as we raced down the empty highway. But no matter how fast I drove, the headlights stayed with us, steady, methodical, never rushing, like predators keeping their prey in sight. I thought about Harper, about his last words. This was never going to end here. Maybe he'd been right. Maybe this wasn't just about Daniel anymore. Maybe it never had been. Then I saw a turn, an unmarked dirt road cutting into the forest. It looked narrow and overgrown, barely visible in the mist. Perfect. I hit the brakes and swerved hard, the tires skidding as mud sprayed up against the doors. The SUV fishtailed, then steadied. The headlights behind us disappeared around the bend, at least for the moment. Ethan clutched the seat. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Hiding," I said, my breath shaking. "They don't know this road." Branches scraped against the sides of the car as I drove deeper into the woods. The dirt road narrowed until it became little more than a trail, leading toward what looked like an old cabin half swallowed by the trees. The roof sagged, the windows were broken, but it was shelter, and right now, that was all we needed. I killed the engine, and the world went silent, except for the soft patter of rain on the windshield. Ethan exhaled shakily. "Do you think we lost them?" I said, though my voice didn't sound convincing even to myself. "Come on." We got out quietly, the ground soft and cold under our shoes. The air smelled of moss and wet wood. I helped him toward the cabin, each of us listening for the distant hum of engines, the crunch of tires on gravel, but there was nothing, only the steady whisper of rain. Inside, it was dark and musty. A few old pieces of furniture lay scattered, a table, a couple of chairs, and what was left of a fireplace. I found a box of matches in one of the drawers and lit the smallest fire I could manage. The orange glow flickered across Ethan's pale face as he sank into a chair, exhausted. I knelt beside him. "Let me see your leg." "It's fine," he muttered, but when I pulled up the torn fabric, I saw the deep, ugly gash near his knee. "This needs to be cleaned." There's no time, Mom. We need to get that drive somewhere safe. I looked at the locket, still clenched in my hand, feeling its small weight like it was burning through my skin. Do you know what's on it, exactly? He hesitated. Not everything, but I know enough. The files aren't just financial records. They're communication logs, encrypted ones. Dad was tracking a group inside a security firm. They were running covert deals for government officials, selling access, names, identities, locations. My stomach turned cold. You mean spies? He nodded slowly. Or worse, people who were supposed to protect the country, selling secrets to whoever paid the most. And they killed your father for finding out. His jaw clenched. He tried to hand the data over to someone he thought he could trust. Harper. I felt the weight of that name like a stone. Harper. The man who'd comforted me when Daniel died, who'd promised to protect us, had been part of the same system that destroyed us. Harper was never trying to solve Dad's case. He was making sure it stayed buried.
The fire crackled, the light flickering across the walls. Outside, a branch snapped, faint but unmistakable. I froze. Ethan's eyes met mine instantly. Someone was out there. I motioned for silence, standing slowly and moving toward the window. Through the cracks in the glass, I could just make out faint movement between the trees, a shadow shifting in the rain. Then, a light. A flashlight beam cutting briefly through the darkness before disappearing again. "They found us," Ethan whispered. "Stay down," I said, grabbing the poker from beside the fireplace. My heart was hammering, but my mind was strangely clear. I'd spent months, years, waiting for someone else to save us, but now I knew no one would. We were on our own. Footsteps approached the door, slow and deliberate. I could hear the crunch of boots on wet leaves, the faint murmur of voices. 2, maybe 3. I glanced at Ethan. "If something happens, take the locket and run. Do you understand?" "I'm not leaving you," he hissed. "Ethan," I said firmly, meeting his eyes, "you have to." Before he could argue, the door creaked open. A tall figure stepped inside, his silhouette framed by the dim light of the flashlight behind him. For a second, I thought it was another agent, but then he spoke. "Mrs. Collins?" The voice was familiar. He stepped closer, and I saw his face. Battered, pale, but alive. It was Jenkins. Relief hit me so hard I nearly collapsed. "What are you doing here?" He looked around nervously, gun drawn. "They're close," he said. "I followed the SUV that tailed you. They've got at least 2 more cars coming in from the main road. You don't have long." Ethan stood, his voice sharp. "Are you with them?" Jenkins shook his head quickly. "No. After what I saw, I couldn't just walk away. I copied his files before Internal Affairs arrived. I know what they're hiding. But we have to move now." He reached into his jacket and handed me a folded map, the paper damp from rain. "There's an old ranger station about 15 miles north, abandoned for years, but it still has a working radio tower. If you get there, you can send those files to someone outside the system." "Someone we can trust?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "Someone who's been trying to expose them for years. You'll know when you hear her voice." A crash outside cut him off, the sound of a car door slamming, followed by muffled shouting. Jenkins turned sharply toward the window. "They're here." He looked back at me, his eyes hard. "You take your son and run. I'll hold them off." "Jenkins! No!" He smiled faintly. "I owe your husband that much." Then he turned, gun raised, and stepped out into the rain as the first shots split the night. The first burst of gunfire echoed like thunder through the forest, tearing through the damp night air. I grabbed Ethan's hand and pulled him toward the back door, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard it felt like it might shatter.
The cabin shook under the noise, wood splintering as bullets tore through the walls. Jenkins' voice carried through the chaos, shouting orders, then another shot, closer this time. "Mom!" Ethan gasped, stumbling as his injured leg buckled. I caught him under the arm and dragged him toward the back, my breath coming in ragged bursts. The rear exit was jammed, swollen wood, years of rot, but I threw my shoulder against it until it cracked open. Cold air hit us like a slap. "Go!" I hissed.
Ethan limped through, and I followed, ducking low as more shots rang out. A flashlight beam swept across the clearing, slicing through the darkness. I pushed Ethan toward the trees, forcing him forward. "Don't stop," I whispered. "Whatever happens, keep moving." Behind us, Jenkins was still firing. Then, a scream. Not his. For a fleeting second, hope flickered through me, but it died as quickly as it came when another shot sounded, followed by silence. The forest swallowed us. Branches whipped against my face, wet leaves clinging to my clothes. The rain had turned to a fine mist that made it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Ethan stumbled again, groaning in pain. "Mom, I can't." "Yes, you can." I tightened my grip, half carrying him. "We're almost there." "Where?" "The ranger station. Jenkins said 15 miles, maybe less if we cut through the ridge." "That could take hours." "Then we keep walking until it doesn't." We move through the underbrush, every sound magnified. The rustle of branches, the squelch of mud underfoot, the distant hum of engines somewhere behind us. I knew they were still coming. These weren't people who gave up. After what felt like an eternity, we reached a narrow creek cutting through the woods. I helped Ethan wade across, the freezing water biting into our legs. When we reached the other side, we collapsed beneath the cover of a fallen log, gasping for air. He leaned his head back, his face pale, lips trembling. "He saved us, didn't he?" I swallowed hard. Yes, Jenkins knew what he was doing. He was quiet for a while. Then, softly, "How many people have to die for this, Mom?" I didn't have an answer. The rain whispered through the leaves, the world heavy with silence and the faint scent of gunpowder drifting on the wind. I looked at my son, the boy who had once been afraid of thunderstorms, and saw how much had changed in him. The innocence was gone. I pulled the locket from my pocket again and turned it over in my palm. The memory card was still inside, protected, fragile, powerful enough to destroy lives, or save them. "We can't let it end here," I said quietly. "Your father didn't die for nothing." He nodded, but there was something else in his eyes. Guilt. "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated. "Mom, the files. Dad wasn't the only one who had access to them. I wasn't supposed to find them. His voice broke. "I sent a copy to someone before they caught me." I froze. "What do you mean you sent a copy?" He looked down, avoiding my eyes. "There's a woman online. She runs an encrypted blog, leaks information about corruption cases. I used a hidden network to contact her. She calls herself Haven. I didn't tell her who I was, just that I had evidence tied to a government cover-up." My breath caught. "Ethan, do you have any idea what that means? If they intercepted that..." "I didn't use my real name. I used a proxy server. She doesn't even know it came from here." I pressed my hands against my face, trying to steady the spinning in my head. If Haven publishes any of it, they'll know the leak came from Daniel's files. They'll come for anyone connected. They already are.
he said softly. He wasn't wrong, and maybe in a way it didn't matter anymore. The truth was already out there, at least in part. Maybe it was too late to stop it. A noise broke through the stillness, faint, mechanical. I lifted my head. Headlights again, cutting through the trees like eyes in the dark. "Get down," I whispered. We pressed ourselves flat against the ground. A black SUV crept along the dirt road we'd crossed earlier, moving slowly, scanning the forest. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw the outline of a man holding a device, a signal scanner. They weren't just searching for us. They were tracking something. My heart stopped. "The locket," I breathed. Ethan frowned. "What?"
They're tracking the drive. It's encrypted, but it must have a transmitter. They know exactly where it is. I yanked it from my pocket, staring at it in horror. The tiny LED embedded near the hinge flickered faintly, something I hadn't noticed before. Without thinking, I hurled it into the creek. It disappeared into the black water with a small splash, and the light vanished instantly. The SUV stopped, the headlights sweeping over the area one last time before turning and driving off. We waited in silence until the sound faded completely. Then Ethan exhaled shakily. "You just threw away the only proof we had." I shook my head. "No, you said you sent a copy. That means the truth still exists, somewhere out there. That's what matters." He nodded reluctantly, wiping rain from his face. "So what now?" "Now we survive long enough to make sure Haven gets the rest." We started moving again, slower now, following the creek upstream. The forest was thinning, the ground rising, the mist beginning to clear as the faintest light of dawn crept over the horizon. Somewhere up ahead, I saw the outline of a metal tower breaking through the treetops, the ranger station. It looked abandoned, just as Jenkins said. The windows were boarded and ivy crawled up the side, but the old radio antenna still stood, stretching high above the trees. As we got closer, I noticed something strange. Faint footprints near the door, fresh despite the rain. Ethan saw them too. Someone's here. I glanced around, scanning the tree line. The woods were still. No movement, no sound but the dripping of water from the leaves. I reached for the door handle. It creaked softly as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was cold and stale. The control panel was covered in dust, but one of the switches glowed faintly green, still working. Ethan stepped forward, his eyes wide. "We can use this." Before I could answer, a voice came from the shadows behind us. "You're late." We spun around. A woman stepped out of the corner, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, with dark hair tied back and a small pistol holstered at her side. She looked at Ethan, then at me, her expression unreadable. "My name's Haven. I think we have a lot to talk about." For a long moment, no one spoke. The name hung in the air like smoke, heavy and disbelieving. Haven. The faceless whisper behind every leaked document, every buried truth clawed from the dark corners of power. And now she was standing right in front of us, real and alive, in this forgotten ranger station in the middle of nowhere. Ethan's voice trembled. You're Haven?" The woman gave a faint, knowing smile. "You didn't think I'd send people like that to meet you, did you?" Her tone was calm, but her eyes flicked toward the window, alert, calculating. "They're still out there, by the way. You didn't lose them for long." I moved closer, my instincts sharp. "How do we know you're really who you say you are?" She tilted her head slightly. "Because your husband trusted me." The air drained from my lungs. "Daniel?" "I worked with him before everything went south. He sent me fragments of what he found, names, files, transfer logs. He told me he was close to something big, then he went silent. Until your son here decided to finish what his father started." Ethan's hands tightened into fists. He didn't tell us anything. We didn't even know what he was working on until... He stopped, the words choking off. Haven nodded. He wanted to protect you. But when you found those files, they were already watching you. You were supposed to vanish quietly. Your note, Ethan? She looked at him, her gaze softening. It broke protocol, but it also saved your life. He looked at me then, that same mixture of guilt and defiance I'd seen since the night he disappeared. I didn't know what else to do, Mom. I thought leaving would protect you. I touched his arm. And now? He hesitated. Now I just want this to mean something.
Haven stepped closer, setting a small device on the dusty console, a portable transmitter. You were right to come here. The old tower still works, and this spot is off most government grids. We can use it to send everything your father uncovered, every encrypted file, every photograph, every document, to servers they can't reach. Once it's out there, it can't be buried again. And then what? I asked. They'll hunt us to the ends of the earth for this. They already are. But once the truth is public, it won't matter who they kill anymore. Their power comes from the silence they enforce. Outside, a low rumble vibrated through the ground. Engines, multiple. Headlights slicing through the distant trees again. My heart raced. They found us, Ethan whispered. Haven's jaw tightened. We don't have much time. The files are heavy. It'll take a few minutes to send. Do it, I said. Whatever happens next, we finish this. She began typing, her fingers flying across the keyboard. A low hum filled the cabin as the transmitter flickered to life, data streams racing across the screen. Ethan stood beside her, helping to crypt the last of Daniel's coded archives. I could almost see Daniel in him, the same intensity, the same unyielding need to make things right. The sound of vehicles grew louder, closer. Then, a voice from outside booming through a megaphone. "Step out of the building! You have nowhere to run!" Ethan flinched, glancing at me. "Mom, keep working," I ordered, grabbing the rusted rifle from the wall, a relic from decades past, but still loaded. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was not. You don't stop until it's done. The first burst of gunfire shattered the window. Haven ducked instinctively, typing faster. Almost there. 70%. I fired blindly through the broken frame, glass raining down, the echo deafening in the confined space. A shout followed, then another volley of bullets. Ethan leaned over the console, voice shaking. "It's almost done, Mom. Just a few more seconds." Then, the screen flashed green. Data, upload, verified. Mirror servers active. Haven exhaled, relief washing over her face. It's out. Every file, every secret. The whole world will know. A single tear slid down Ethan's cheek, a mix of fear, relief, and something deeper. Daniel did it. We did it! But the victory lasted only a moment before a grenade clattered through the open window. "Down!" I screamed, grabbing Ethan and throwing him to the floor as the explosion tore through the room. The world became light and noise, a blast of heat, splintering wood, shattering glass. When I opened my eyes, the air was thick with smoke. My ears rang, my body ached. The transmitter lay in pieces, sparks flickering weakly. I crawled to the console. The screen was shattered, but the faint message still glowed beneath the cracks. Data upload verified. Mirror servers active. The truth was safe. Boots pounded on the porch outside. A man kicked open the door, weapon raised, a black-clad soldier with a visor that reflected the flicker of firelight. I raised the rifle, even knowing it was useless against what was coming. Then, from somewhere deep in the woods, a second explosion, louder, farther, but powerful enough to shake the ground. The soldier hesitated, turning toward the sound. Through the haze, a shadow moved, fast, deliberate. Haven. She burst from the smoke, gun in hand, taking down 2 of the men before they could react. Then she turned to us and shouted, "Move!" I pulled Ethan to his feet. We stumbled out the back door into the rain and ran, through the trees, through the dark, hearts pounding like war drums. The forest glowed orange behind us, the cabin engulfed in flames. We didn't stop until the roar faded into silence. Dawn was breaking now, faint lights spilling through the mist, painting the world in pale gold.
We collapsed beside the creek, gasping for air. Haven joined us moments later, blood on her sleeve, but her eyes alive with a fierce, burning triumph. "It's done," she said simply. "The networks are already spreading it. People are waking up. They can't hide anymore." Ethan looked at her, then at me. "What happens to us now?" She smiled faintly. "You disappear. New names, new places, but your father's truth will live forever." I stared out at the horizon, the rising sun glinting off the water, and for the first time in years, I felt something like peace. The night my son didn't come home had nearly destroyed me, but now I understood. His note wasn't a farewell. It was a beginning, a promise that the truth once found would never die in silence again. And somewhere out there, as the world began to stir with the shock of revelation, Daniel's voice echoed in my heart, steady, certain, unafraid. The truth always finds a way home.